So we're going to talk about less than zero trust and protecting beyond the ecosystem. We're going to keep it a little bit shorter than the earlier session, because we know we've got something coming up after this at 2:45 for the final session. So yeah, what I'll do first is just ask the guys to introduce themselves so we know who we're talking to, and then we'll take it from there. Ash, you want to go first?
Hi, so Ash, I'm the global CISO for Apex Group. So we are one of the world's largest fund administrators, fund management firms, do some banking, private equity hedge, all of that good stuff. We've got about $3.5 trillion in assets under administration and management, and about 13,000 people across 40 countries.
Afternoon, everyone. Allan Cahill. So I work with Aptiv, the Executive Director for CyberSecurity. So Aptiv is a Tier 1 supplier in automotive. We work with vehicle electrification, hardware, and product development for cabling and active safety and user experience in cars.
My name's Eoin. I'm the CISO at the Carne Group. We're an Irish-based, privately owned funds management company. We offer services to the funds industry and fund management services, and we do consulting as well in terms of bringing foreign funds into Ireland, and we have a presence in the Caymans, Jersey Islands, Ireland, Luxembourg, and the UK.
Cool. I'll start with you, Eoin. So zero trust, we know, is not a new concept, thankfully. That'd be scary if it was. What do you think's been influencing that shift from the technical security model into the more flexible and comprehensive approach?
Yeah, it feels deja vu to answer the question again. So in terms of the principles of zero trust, in terms of authentication, identification, that side of things, we've been doing that for years. In terms of usernames and passwords, credentials have always existed. In terms of networks and segmentations and making small boundaries around things, if you're intelligent, you're clever, we've been doing this as well for years. In terms of assumed breach, we've also been kind of doing that as well. As most security people, if you have a mindset where you adopt how would you attack your own environment, and you've a better knowledge than anyone else in terms of how you go about attacking your own environment. So from a principles perspective, it's been around a long time. But if you take the change and what's driving the real need for it today is that ubiquitousness in connectivity, networktivity, the drive towards usability and accessibility and available everywhere, cloud-based apps. It's not just the people in your organization, or it's not just the users of your application. A lot of the times, things are globally exposed, and you're exposed to every attacker on the planet. So if you take cloud computing then on top of that, you're now starting to get into where, half the security model is yours, half the security model is somebody else's. You have a lot of organizations and startups where you're looking at situations where, it's developer-led, developer-built, and a lot of the design models and security models were never built or baked in. So you've got all these issues and problems together that actually they need a solution. And in terms of, it's back to those three principal things. Know the person that's coming to you. Set some conditional policies to know where they're coming from. And then in terms of how you build your environments, just, micro-segment, make them small. If it's something that's absolutely critical, make sure it reaches out to what it needs to connect to, and don't allow connections in. And in terms of assumed breach, I said the story this morning. I heard of somebody that actually misinterpreted the assumed breach. They went to a board and they said, we are probably already breached, which was not a very career-enhancing thing to say, if you think about it. But when we say assumed breach, is, adopt the persona of the attacker and make sure you can defend against the scenarios you come up with. Like, irrespective of what we talked about DORA in other sessions today, we've gotten a lot more information on governance frameworks, compliance with frameworks, and all that type of stuff. But effectively, all auditors, all regulators, all of those people are just trying to validate and verify that you have your bases right and your base security level right. So it's more important today than it ever was, and the drivers for it is the increased complexity, the increased availability, and the increased visibility of your technology assets.
See all, know all, do less. Yeah. So, Allan, there's lots of challenges and opportunities around things. The Zero Trust framework, especially when you're considering like remote work, IoT devices, partners, and things like that. Maybe what are they, but how can businesses tackle those known challenges?
Yeah, so I suppose the increasing complexity of our ecosystems and the scale at which they're growing. It doesn't matter if you're a, if you're a global organization or a national level within our own environments, just the scale of which technology is being brought in, whether it's in-house or whether it's cloud, the flexibility that our organizations are also looking to drive so they can go faster, quicker, better. So that onus is back on IT and security to either evolve with them and give them ways to be flexible, to go fast but as safely as possible, or we're going to be left behind. And with the traditional model of security at the perimeter and just yes, no, black, white, that doesn't support their requirements. So when we start thinking about zero trust, when we start thinking about how we can bring in things like AI, hot topic of today, and the guys were talking about it earlier on here, Martin Carne was presenting on the Palo Alto solution about how you're using AI for continuous monitoring, for leverage that technology to attack the sheer scale of logging and activity that's going on. To take some of that effort off the small teams, the teams that are already challenged as it is. So to do more with less. So let the technology work for them. Look at all the user activities. Look at the device activities. Look at the applications. Learn what your baseline looks like. Learn what your user behavior and good looks like. And then start building your policies and your capabilities around that. And make sure that you have the right type of services that can adapt and that can give you that flexibility. So whether it's adaptive authentication, adaptive network controls, integrate those AI capabilities that are learning, that are determining, hey, we have something anomalous, and then feeding that into your adaptive tools where someone is challenged when they need to be challenged, but their overall experience is not being interfered with on a day-to-day basis, just because we have to achieve zero trust.
Absolutely. We might come back to the AI part later on, but before we do, Ash, how would you effectively balance the security needs with usability and efficiency concerns?
Yeah, so look, again, I don't want to repeat myself from this morning, but even as a global CISO, I don't really treat information security as a thing any different from the rest of enterprise technology. And I think the convergence of cyber and enterprise technology will become even more enforced and in anger over the next 18 months. And I'm pretty sure it's coming. And the reason being is that there's a very little attractive proposition when you're having to deal all with the same objectives, right? And ultimately, that is what organizations are dealing with when it comes to reducing loss exposure across the technology estate. We've just gone through a major Netscope deployment. That's as much of an infrastructure and security product as it is a technology product, right? All of that is around centralized management, efficiency of end user access. We created an objective of secure access anywhere, for anyone, to anything. And we've made that a reality. And we've done that by, again, centralized management, cost efficiency gains. Certainly myself, my CTO and my CDO work as this kind of trinity to ensure that any enterprise technology investment that we're making is going after the biggest reduction in loss exposure and therefore creating the biggest amount of revenue generating opportunity for the business. And the only way you can deliver that is by understanding what your users do, how they do it. Allan was just saying there, it's like when you start getting a grip on attribute-based data points around what people are accessing, how are they accessing it, why are they accessing it, you then start to be able to craft quite effective technical policies and setups for them that make them as efficient as possible. And that's, I see my job as a revenue enablement officer, really, in the business. My job is to help this business be richer than any other business in its space than it can be. And I think security and technology should adopt that approach. I think it's the only way we will shift ourselves out of this endless well of cost center into actually, we have trade-offs as a business. We have some very, quite risky strategic objectives and others that are much more risk adverse. I used the example this morning that I know of some organisations that are quite comfortable to happy to breach a regulatory obligation and incur the fine because the outcome for their competition in the business will exceed whatever fine they'll get. And that's a perfect business strategy. It's fine. I mean, there's industries where you can't do that, and there are certain things that you can't do. You know, if you're running a WiCyS plant in a nuclear facility, you know, don't obviously allow any spillages. But the reality is, for most commercial businesses, and you know, I'm ex-government, so I've even seen it in the public sector. I think we can get a lot more flexible in how we can begin tying efficiency for our end users that are going to generate that revenue with the investments that we're making in technology. And I think part of that is not looking at things myopically as just information security, but saying, what investments can we go after that are going to give us the biggest bang for buck?
Absolutely. Coming back to the AI side of it, Allan, so how's the use of continuous AI-powered authentication and monitoring enhance security across all those different ecosystems?
I think it is, and it will do. You know, because by adopting that, that's going to allow organisations to provide a more robust and flexible strategy. And you know, like I said earlier, that's where the rest of the business is going. To your point about needing to increase revenue for security and technology, IT to be seen as business enablers. And potentially as supporting the revenue as opposed to a sunk cost of just sitting behind the scenes blocking everything. So the investments in some of these tools and capabilities, whether you develop them in-house with your own resources or you leverage third-party products, will allow you to do more and more on scale. Our environments are not going to get any simpler. They're going to continue getting more complex. So now is the right time to look at creating that robustness, leveraging technologies that will free up time from our SOC analysts, from our engineers, create automation on repeatable tasks, and make sure that those tools then are integrating into our authentication frameworks, our network controls, our security operations centers, again, to expand the coverage of that ecosystem of automation and business enablement.
And then with regards to emerging threats, then how do you think it is going to be used or help companies anticipate in preparation for those?
Well, I suppose that's what we're being sold when we talk about AI and ML. That idea of the technology learning is that selling point of that technology. So it's not just, hey, look, we feed it in with intelligence now. Give it as much intelligence as possible. It understands the baseline, but using the ML element of that technology, it learns the context. It learns the blueprint. And it can grow with us then to say, well, look, this may not be 100% a match to previous exposures, but there's too many similarities here. And use that ML, use that learning to grow with us and feed that into the incident response team. Again, because more often not what you want is, again, going back to Martin's conversation earlier on, he was saying like 10% of the alerts, 10% of the incidents, 10% of what it finds has to go to his analyst. That's almost an insignificant amount when you think of probably what the Palo Alto system is looks like and the size of it. That's what you want, because you want that 10% to be the utmost critical stuff that needs the attention of those 12 or 14 engineers. The rest of it should be the reliance and the dependence on that technology to learn with you and to feed in and have that automation to just shut stuff down before it becomes an issue.
Absolutely. The threats are exponential as such, but the resources, or at least the human resources, are not.
Are limited.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. I think, sorry, just one very, very, very brief point on that I mentioned, because I'm obsessed with this as well, which is that it's not also just about telemetry on when the attack or an event's coming into the SOC. I spent most of my career in quantitative risk modelling, okay, and so one of the sort of metrics that we track is how much money I lose in response loss, okay, with every incident. And, I noticed, I think over the last couple of incidents, each one of them, we lost tens of thousands of dollars in just wasted time in communication across the incident between, executives wanting this bite-sized message here and the SOC analysts having to go and capture that data there and stuff like this. And one of the ways that we're beginning to look at in a design partnership with our analytics platform is to use machine learning to predefine audience groups in the business as part of crisis management. And then for the product, as it builds the event string for the incident, will auto-send bulletin updates in the type of language that we want for those particular audience groups, because the executives are only going to want a sentence to be like, no, we're still fucked. You need to continue, carrying on. Or actually, we're great. You guys can crack on. And it's the same thing for our client audiences. And I would encourage everyone to think about and measure how much time, which is money per hour of your people, is wasted. And particularly when executives get onto those meetings, they become very expensive meetings. And I think there's a whole gamut of value from AI capability to help us actually expedite the entire life cycle of incident management and not just stopping the attack before it hits the network.
Such a practical application of it, and it's so badly needed. Well, thanks a million, the three of you, for repeating that and doing such a great job. We notice we can get much more kind of compact the more that we do it. We'd have it all done in 5 minutes later on. We have a few minutes, so if anybody does have any questions that you want to ask, crack on. Is there anything anyone would like to ask anyone there?
What's next? What comes after zero trust?
My God.
-1 trust.
Well, no, it's, yeah.
I think zero trust is the principle, and it's the application in your own environment as to how granular you go. Like when we started, zero trust was just the perimeter. It was just getting in and out of the network. Now we're down into we were doing it at a site level. So and literally just the boundary of a site. A site is its own ecosystem. The next phase for us is within the site, separating OT from the IT environment from the physical security perimeter. And after that, we already know it's going to be down to an application level. So SAP or our ERP system, whatever, within one of the data centers is segmented from whatever other critical system is in the same data center. So for me, it's more about the evolution of the granularity you go to with zero trust as opposed to something different to zero trust.
But then you get the shadow IT on one side and you have your IoT that comes in with admin password. How do you
that's where that's where as you touched on this already. Whereas as you start getting to the more micro segmentation, your policies will automatically say within this environment, if you plug in an IoT device, it won't work. It doesn't get a connection. If you want IoT, it goes into this part of the network, and all that's going to do is get an internet connection. It cannot talk sideways on a network, or it can talk within OT, but it cannot talk to the corporate network. So you build those policies, build those boundaries to protect users from themselves. So again, it's about that flexibility with the businesses. We understand they need to bring this technology. They need the flexibility. They're doing R&D. This is the revenue generating stuff. We can't stop it, but at least let's protect them. So go for it, but it'll only work if you plug it in over here.
And I'd imagine in some of those more complex environments, like there's automated tools where you, like in cloud, where you can automate the creation and the killing off essentially of users within cloud environments. So if you're spending less time doing that, I guess, it'll balance the time spent on the things that involve more PHA.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it, from what I'm seeing, I think in the next, particularly like half a decade, is decision optimization. I think most endpoint products, and if I think of most of the security stack and enterprise technology, have long gone after the desire to be, we help you make decisions. And the reality is that they don't in lots of cases. They give you a process capability to make decisions, but when I look at all the reporting dashboards, I was just saying earlier, I'm just hiring an apprentice to be a complete metrics data-driven analyst in security because I'm fed up with having to manually crank in R and Python all of the analytics because my providers just are so out with reality of what they think we need to report on that then actually influences change. And where I think, particularly with ephemeral systems in like the cloud environments and stuff, will be is that, and again, getting down to the very, very micro levels of zero trust, will be that the products will be able to execute very, very seamlessly and very, very quickly. And essentially, all we will be left to do is just make sort of very, very clear decisions, but being able to deliver that at a very, very high rate of efficiency compared to today. And actually, I think eventually set almost, predefined tolerance thresholds with which systems can act autonomously within, your sort of appetite levels. And I think at the moment, that's a governance thing in a business, and a very washy one at that, highly subjective, value-based judgments. Whereas actually, I think going forward with technical innovation, particularly around AI, is we will be able to actually codify tolerance thresholds and allow systems to act autonomously. Again, might be very, very constrained environments to begin with, but I think eventually the tech will do that much more flexibly and efficiently than we will.
And you can deal with the fun stuff then all yourself.
Yeah, and one probable place, and there is a great need for tooling in the space of tidying up legacy mess and technical debt. Because every time you go to implement something or otherwise, if you don't have your people grouped correctly, if you don't know what that role or function does, and as you try to straighten out an organisation, especially like most of the companies we see today, like, you know, they came from startup, they moved to, you know, anything to bring in money, to pay wages, to keep the organisation alive. And then as they brought in the specialties, having to tidy up those things, you know, you might have your infrastructure built by your developers, you might have had teams that worked across 5-6 teams, but they don't need to today. So, you know, if AI and that technology can do and glean and advise on, here's your ideal structure, here's the groups they should be in, and if you can use the AI as well to actually do the work to recreate your structures, we'll be in a very healthy place. Because anyone that does that type of stuff, you probably realise how much time the research and the analysis takes is insane, you know, and you've risks there that you're not aware of. And then even if you get all of that right, you may have applications that are badly written that just punch holes in the whole lot. So, yeah.
There's always another challenge waiting for you around the corner. So I think that's, if you have any other questions, what we'll do is we'll take it outside and we'll keep the conversations going from there. Otherwise, Ash, Allan, Eoin, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank you.